this is why the libraries are so important, because I would have never have discovered this before.
Adam, so nice to have you here in the library.
Thanks, it's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you about books referencing research, but I feel like the natural place to start is that you are here from London for your own book launch, Domestic Stage. Can you talk about how the relationship with Vowels started, how you ended up here?
Yeah, I've written this new book about fashion photography in domestic space, and the book starts with me looking through archives and magazines basically, and I work at Central St Martin's, which is an amazing archive which I can get into, which is great.
But we love academic libraries.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it is, technically a private library for students and staff. So it's kind of hard for the general public or whatever to get access to these kind of things.
Yeah.
So the whole point of the launch events was to try and find spaces in different cities that were publicly accessible archives. So this is obviously an amazing one in New York. We did one in London at Reference Point, which is you can just literally walk in. And then another one in Oslo, which is this amazing space called the Fashion Research Library.
Yeah. You've talked about in other interviews about part of the intention of this book, and maybe some other work that you've done as well, is like taking fashion photography seriously in the same way that like other types of photography are taken more seriously. And it strikes me that there is something connected to like what you're talking about, accessibility in fashion photography. Like it's in magazines, and it's like it's made to be seductive to the average person, maybe, Can you talk about that a little bit, about how fashion photography became something that you're quite interested in?
Sure,
in your career?
I mean, it's kind of my entry into the whole thing, really. So the first thing I bought was the face when I was off school sick one day when I was like 15 or something, living in a really small town in England. So, none of this is on your doorstep. Fashion is like this thing that exists in big cities or whatever.
Yeah.
And I vividly remember buying this copy. It had the Manic Street Preachers on the front cover and just be like, what on earth is this? What is this world of stuff that I didn't even know existed? So obviously way pre-internet really, but way pre-social media, you know? But the magazine still has this kind of like, I don't know, it's still this kind of package, when you look at anything online, Instagram, you're often looking at like a single image. A magazine is everything that is good or bad in that issue, It's like the advertising, the sequence of a story is really important, and you kind of lose a lot of that with just viewing stuff online.
And I know that you have quite an extensive collection of fashion magazines as well. What does that library look like? Where is it in your attic?
So I live in this small town called Glossop. It's like half an hour east of Manchester. It's in the Peak District. It's stuff I've just collected over the years, really. So there's been clear outs, moving house every now and again. But it's kind of keeping the core of it, So it's basically magazines and photo books. It's useful having it there, I guess. But you still can't really beat the libraries.
No, I mean, you can't beat a library. I love a library. Do you have an almost complete collection of the face? Did I read that online?
Yeah, I think that's a bit of an exaggeration.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I've got quite a few of them.
Yeah, okay. So the face, I know there's a lot of Vogue
so that was really important. So that Vogue Homme International was kind of the starting point for this book, really.
Yes, right.
I originally, a long time ago, maybe 2017, I put a proposal together to make a book about this one period of Vogue Homme International.
Right.
So it was taking some elements of that, and there's still quite a few stories from that period in this book.
Right. Something else that I wanted to ask about is like previous projects that you've done. So the two big ones that I've kind of found were the Preston is My Paris, which is a zine that you made that kind of turned into a collective that published other things. And then also North, Fashion the Identity, which was an exhibition that was co-curated with you. Those two projects, I've heard you talk about them as like being interested in how artists relate to like the familiar or the banal.
Sure.
And I wonder if you can talk about like the kind of like conceptual lineage between those two and this book. Like, is there a link between them?
I guess, it's good. It's a good sort of observation, really. I guess the everyday is the thing that would link it. So I've always been interested in the slightly kind of more mundane things and why photographers are interested in that.
Yeah.
I guess that idea of sort of living in, so Preston's like a very small city in the UK.
Right.
I lived there for like 10 years. And I guess the starting point for that was this idea that you can kind of make anywhere where you live as exciting as somewhere like Paris or whatever. So all of that trickles down to this idea of the North Fashioning Identity Project, which was co-curated with Lou Stoppard, and that was this idea that I kind of noticed that fashion was being very influenced by the north of England. You had like older Raf Simons things that were very focused on sort of New Order types things, but there was even like a Virgil Abloh campaign collection, sorry, that was focused around the Gallaghers and things. You know?
Okay.
It's kind of not that well known, that one. So it's kind of trying to understand why this region of England had this influence globally. You know, when you see fashion history or any projects that kind of have looked at fashion photography, it generally is the studio or the street that it's focused on. So the studio is this kind of controlled environment where you can create these kind of ideals. Yeah. And then the street is where people either live out these ideals or reject them and offer something else. Right. I guess the stuff I'm drawn to has always been this kind of slightly more mundane situation. So the domestic being that. And then starting from that Vogue Homme research, there was a number of people like Mallory Marder, Tierney Gearan, people like that who have featured Sarah Jones at the time. And the common thread seemed to be that most of it was set in some kind of domestic space. That's the common thread, but there's so many ways different people are using it.
Okay, I think we should go to the library.
Sure.
What's the first book?
Takashi Homma. So I guess I picked this one out because he's in the book. He's someone who I've kind of followed a long time. It was important that he was in the book because he's had such a career in terms of his photographic work across both fashion and personal work, documentary, whatever, that so much of it revolves around this idea of the domestic, particularly in Tokyo, and whether that's families or architecture or just daily life, that sort of stuff. I think one of the things that's so interesting about him is he's so prolific with making publications. So this is something I've never seen before. It seems to be a project about literally just diaries over a year. My knowledge of kind of Japanese photographic culture isn't as extensive as many people's for sure, but one of the things that I'm kind of aware of with it is how important publishing is within that. It's just this kind of like committed study of a place, I guess, which I find fascinating.
What's next?
Totally different. Yoshihiko Ueda, large format, and basically just endless pictures of this forest. You know, after 3 or 4 days in a big city like here, I'm kind of desperate to escape to somewhere like this, I suppose. Yeah. I guess you can kind of like try and theorize and make things, you know, academic or whatever. You really don't need to with this sort of work. You just look at it and sort of drift off into a whole other place with it, don't you?
Yeah. What's next?
Photography Journal, Asahi Camera May 2001. So almost like a trade catalogue type situation, which again is something that you find this kind of visual language with more kind of Japanese publications. So there's the kind of things like Go Out and Popeye and all those kind of things. They're just like a totally different visual language compared to what we would see in a European magazine, which is kind of fascinating in its own right, really. Hiramix was one of those photographers that names sort of really stick out as someone who was kind of referenced a lot at those times. And I think there's this kind of sort of pre-internet snapshot quantity of images, being very prolific with photographing. The influence of this kind of aesthetic, I mean, the way it's kind of, the edit is one thing, so the landscape against the more kind of portraiture type images, I think is quite influential. I mean, here the collection's called Everyday Life, is it? This collection, the images by Nigel and Takashi and things like that. It's all part of this world, you know, this visual world, and you can definitely see the influence of that.
Right. And
then again, and totally new to me, I think I'm just drawn to the cover.
Those firefighters.
Yeah, firefighters. Japanese firefighters. Again, it kind of looks like a fashion shoot, particularly with the kind of influence of like workwear and utility clothing on fashion.
Yeah.
They're all incredibly good looking as well. So, you can kind of imagine this being a constructed scene.
Yes.
Then as you go through, it seems to be kind of groups of people who share a job.
In like a uniform.
But then you kind of like, the more you sort of look through it, it kind of feels like the same people are in every picture. So it feels like a little bit more to it than just this kind of, initially I thought it was like almost like a documentary project of people in different workplaces.
Yeah.
Having spent a bit more time with it, it seems like it's 4 people playing these roles.
Yes.
This is why the libraries are so important, because I would have never have discovered this before. I'm Adam Murray. I'm a curator, writer, and lecturer based in Glossop, a small town in the UK. I'm donating my book, The Domestic Stage, to the Vowel References Library. It is called The Domestic Stage, When Fashion Image Comes Home, and it examines the influence and the role of domestic space in fashion image. Each chapter begins with a sort of important figure within this kind of subject. So Tina Barney, she's so influential and comes up so much in kind of references and research within this world that it was so important to include her. Then we move on to performance and control. Similarly to Tina Barney, we start with a really important figure within this, Carrie Mae Weems, with her very influential kitchen table series. That was then kind of informed a Bottega campaign that she did a few years ago with A$AP Rocky. That's the kind of the cover image, and that seemed to kind of summarize the book. It was a mixture of people who work with it across different genres of work, the role that it can have when it moves into a fashion context in terms of introducing the work to new audiences. It just kind of seemed to summarize the book perfectly. You would then move on to the final chapter, which is called The Imagined Home. Spaces that obviously feel a little bit more constructed. So, and kind of spaces where, set design is really important in this. Decisions made about every detail of the book, even if it looks kind of quite carefree, like this Corin Day shoot, so famous and important, from British Vogue in 1993. This was offering a different lifestyle to aspire to, I guess, and which is why it was kind of so interesting when it came out in the early 90s. So yeah, I'm donating that, and hopefully it provides a kind of reference book that will encourage people to kind of learn more about each of the artists, or just take an interest in this subject in the same way some of those early reference books really got me into it all.